Welcome everyone to the Facebook Live. We are going to discuss fertile grounds today. This title I think is quite catchy and I love it, and I used to do many talks around Richmond when I was first starting my practice. All over. I did them at the Richmond Public Library. I did a lot of talks at Galloway's, if anyone remembers Galloway's health food store. I did like a monthly series, once a month for 2 years. did a different topic on nutrition. Did a lot of walkthroughs and Neetu's favorite products through the stores. But at the front of the store, they always set up chairs, and I did it with if many of you know Arlene Croker, she used to write an article for the Richmond Review, super well known in Richmond, and I actually also used to write for the Richmond Review. I used to do talks at Kwantlen, the city of Richmond, and then one of my first places that I did talks was when Serendipities in Stevenson had the yoga studio next door as well. It was Serendipity's bookstore plus the yoga studio next door, and it was run all by Penny Alport. So if you guys are well-known old school Richmond people, you'll know Penny Alport too, because she is really well known in the community, still is, but she moved to Sunshine Coast. And so she's back and forth still, I think, but she's kind of like a Richmond pioneer in what she kind of brought to Steveston, and she was like way ahead of the game. And so I partnered up with her, somehow we crossed paths. I partnered up with her, and we did a series together of lectures, and I would do the naturopathic seminar component, and then she would do the workshop with yoga and body work right afterwards, it was usually right afterwards, so it was really awesome. And we called it, I think we did quite a few together, and eventually called it Women at the Well, because if you think of traditional cultures, women used to heal by sitting by the well where they got water and just talk, and that closeness and that camaraderie with other women releases oxytocin, and it's very healing for women. So women need to talk to heal, and in our modern day culture we've lost a lot of that, and I think it's being put on partners or children, and partners, a male, especially if it's a male partner, they don't have the mental capacity or emotional capacity, and their brains aren't wired to hold conversations like women, and women to women kind of detox conversations. Children should not be doing that for their parents. That is usually an issue as well. But women to women, like in the tribes, in the traditional cultures, in the villages, sitting together. Oh, so my cousin Rita has just popped on. Maybe her son Leaf too. So hi Leaf, if you're popped on. Yeah, women should, traditionally in villages would talk to each other all day, and that would balance their hormones. So that was the talk that we did. One of the talks we did there was called Fertile Grounds. So it was a longer 1 hour and a bit seminar, but I'll do like a little bit of a gist for the purpose of our Facebook Live here today. So fertility is a big topic. I don't love using the word infertile because I think fertile grounds is far more explanation, gives far more of an explanation. So my little nephew says, hi Neetu Masti, hi Leaf, I can't wait to see you soon. Yeah, so fertile grounds to me is far more of an accurate depiction of what the journey is to have a child. And if there's challenges, I hate the word infertility. I really do. It just comes with so much, and it leaves a woman feeling so much, and it just, I don't know, places a lot on her. And so I don't love that word. So when I'm thinking of fertility, I'm thinking of rich soil in order to birth the seed and have the seed bust through the soil. And so we have to make the soil really, really healthy. It needs very key characteristics to make the health of the soil vital, vibrant, alive. And that is the journey to fertility in my perspective. And, you know, when you think of a lush, fertile soil and planting a seed in that, that's analogous to the cellular terrain of the woman's hormones, the uterus, the entire basically the cellular terrain of the person being the carrier, trying to get pregnant. And I've done many Facebook Lives on the cellular terrain. You can go back and look at those. Terrain, not train. I'm saying it, T-R-A-I-N. It's T-E-R-R-A-I-N. So terrain, like the architecture, the texture of the cells of the inner world. If they're toxic, if they're not healthy, the body will have a symptom, and not being able to host pregnancy could be the symptom. In very, very rare cases, it's unexplained. I have seen in my personal friend circle, there's for sure classic unexplained, but many times it gets labeled as unexplained when that's not really the case. That's from a Western perspective, it's unexplained, but when you look into a naturopathic perspective, there is a lot of stuff to correct. And so there definitely is an explanation for the challenges or the delays. So when you think of the cellular terrain being lush and ready and, you know, able to host and nutrient dense versus trying to plant a seed in, say, perhaps cement, it's not really, or dead soil, it's not really going to be the most advantageous environment for certain seeds. Some seeds, yes, may thrive in those, but for the purpose of this analogy, we're trying to, you know, create a distinction. And so we have to make the terrain or the fertile grounds fertile. That is the whole purpose of fertility. And it's not just about estrogen and progesterone being imbalanced and on the lab tests being balanced, because serum lab test, the blood lab test, is often not the most accurate way to depict the hormones either. The better way is to do saliva hormones if you want to check. However, so that'll start off my first point. I'm going to go over 3 points for fertility. And the first one is hormones. So we have to check if the hormones are balanced. But the checking often doesn't have to be blood tests or saliva tests. It's doing a detailed health history. So when I'm doing a detailed health history, I'm asking, how old were you when you got your menses? Was it irregular when it started? Was it regular? Was it heavy? Were there clots? Were there PMS symptoms? Did you miss school? Were you like 17 when it started? You know, that is far later. Did it ever stop in the midst of, you know, your 20s? Did it ever stop when you were in high stress situations? How was your mom's health history with her hormones, if that history is available to us? Were you on any external hormones like the birth control pill? That has a huge impact. In the medical world, it's just thought like, take the pill. When you want to get pregnant, you stop the pill. Well, the pill is stopping your ovaries from ovulating, and we need an egg to be fertilized and released every month in order to have pregnancy. And you can't just think of the body as the physical. There's the mental, emotional, and spiritual component. Now, when you're taking a pill every month, to me, there's a spiritual component. You're stopping your ovaries from doing what they're supposed to do. No judgment on it. I know many use the pill. I have no judgment on it, but this is the reality that you have to know, that the ovaries are not ovulating. And when you stop the pill, yes, you may start ovulating right away, but sometimes it's taken me to help a woman start to ovulate off the pill like 1 or 2 years. And the body is not happy. there's mental, emotional, and a deeper consciousness that has been held back, and now all of a sudden these hormones aren't in place, and it takes a bit of time to get them going again. And was your body, when you actually tune in and talk to it, happy that you were on this pill? Did it appreciate that it wasn't ovulating? These things sound crazy, but it's not crazy. It's thinking of your whole body as more than just physiology. We are not just hormones. We have a spirit, we have a soul, we have a consciousness. And so when that consciousness is altered, that the physiology is altered, the consciousness also has kind of an opinion on it. Did you go against what your consciousness knew to do and use your mind and think, I'm just gonna be on this pill because I need to, for whatever reason, you know? Does that make sense, that we're more than just physiology? Just give me like a thumbs up if that makes sense. But the first thing is we have to balance estrogen and progesterone. So if there's any issues with the hormones, whether it was PMS, missing school, vomiting, migraines, sweating profusely. So my cousin Rita says that makes sense. Yes, whether it was sweating profusely, were there cysts in the picture? And then sometimes it's like, let's just take the cyst out. Was there a little bit of like missing periods, you know, and then you're put on the pill to regulate the period? Well, when you have a period with the pill, it's not a real period. There's no uterine lining being shed. So there's no ovulation, so there's no uterine lining being shed. So, you know, your body just has to take time to get balanced off of it. But when we take the detailed health history, all of that is taken into account. I talk about everyone's premenstrual moods, their cravings, their back pains. Do they know when they're ovulating? If the hormones are balanced, it's usually a clear sign that they're ovulating, whether it's day 12, 13, 14, 15, sometimes it's a little earlier. We have to figure that out. The woman needs to figure out her fertility window. Some women don't even know their days of ovulation and they miss their fertility window and then get so frustrated because they're not pregnant, but the egg is released and you only have a finite window to get pregnant. And if you don't know when the egg is being released, it's going to make fertility a difficult journey. But is the ovulation strong? Is there a discharge that's thicker? It looks like uncooked egg white. That should come around mid-month. And the purpose of that, even though you're not getting pregnant every single month, but the purpose of that is to trap sperm. So it's like a thicker ovulation. And that is what's helpful when attempting to get pregnant when the time actually arises. So all of those signs and symptoms need to be known. We can use things such as body temperature, basal body temperature, to tell when you're ovulating. You can get an ovulation kit. Those are sometimes pricey, but taking your temperature every morning and then you see a slight dip and then it comes back up, and then that dip time is usually ovulation. And so to know that, you can try like 2-3 days before ovulation, 1 day after ovulation. But also, you know, if there was all that health history, say you're like 28, 30, 35, 40, trying to get pregnant now, and all that health history was just not addressed, and then all of a sudden wanting to get pregnant, sometimes it doesn't work like that. And yes, you can say your friend down the street got off the pill, boom, got pregnant right away. Every single person's journey is different. You have a lineage of women that you come from, and it's all related to their hormonal health history, so it just can't be compared. And so you have to take into account, whatever age you start, your whole menstrual history. Is there an estrogen dominance? That's usually the case, and that's usually not found on blood tests. It's an internal estrogen dominance in comparison to progesterone. So when there's not enough progesterone, it leads me to the next point, which is probably the most common thing that I see of all time when it's unexplained fertility. But number one is balancing estrogen and progesterone. When progesterone is low, there is an absolute reason for it, and whether it could have started in utero when your mom was pregnant with you. That's how deep it goes. So, you know, we're no longer living in cycle with the sun and sunrise, sunset. We're not connected to the earth. We have so much blue light around us. We're not touching nature. We're not touching the ground with our feet. We have so much toxicity around us. That really impacts our delicate hormonal system, and all of that impacts fertility. So it's gonna impact our fertility, and when the progesterone is low, there's clear reasons, and it could have started from your mom's generation. And it seems like an insurmountable task where a lot of women are like, I don't wanna go through all that, but do you want to force your body to put a seed, and it can, in a state of cement, or do you want it to be lush, fertile grounds? So yes, we can do it naturally often, but even if you go the fertility route, I still say make sure that the cellular terrain is lush and fertile, because without doing that, sometimes you can force a pregnancy through IVF, and it's not a lush, fertile grounds yet, but it can be forced. So wouldn't you want to ensure that the terrain is ready to receive the egg at its utmost highest quality? Oftentimes, I don't want to generalize, but the quality of patient going through fertility challenges is there's a commonality of high anxiety and wanting the pregnancy yesterday. And so, you know, when there's something that we find and we have to work on it, there's just like, you know, utter crushing despair every month when there's no pregnancy, when we're just starting. So I always say, give me 120 days, that's 4 months. That's enough to completely change the egg quality. And if there's still issues, then by all means do involve other processes. But you know, dealing with that crushing, I need to be pregnant yesterday, is a huge hindrance. That's not one of my points I was going to talk about, but I think I should talk about, because it's almost like an energy in the room that you can feel, and it's that all of this like pain and control and deep fear of it not happening, all present in the room, and it needs to happen because I'm so fearful, at like me being the patient, so fearful that it's not going to happen, that I will almost halt my process because that fear is so big. You know, there's many places that have started like fertility cruises and things like that, go on vacation. It's more than just stress. It's like to get that cloud unclamped off of the mind so the body can do its process is part of the journey. You know, there's often studies that say like once somebody has adopted, then they'll get pregnant. And that is, I believe, because that mental fear state is lifted, and there is a child in the picture now, to you know, put your love towards. All of that fear is dissipated a bit, and then the body can do its natural processes. That I see a lot. So when I see fertility patients, there's a lot of balancing hormones, but the hormones are often off because of that picture, and that picture has been there many years. I had that picture. My clamping on my mind didn't go for fertility and hormones. It went to my asthma and lungs. So everyone has it, but when it comes for fertility, it clamps onto that aspect. Some people, it could be money. Other people, it could be you know, another health condition. Some people, it could be, you know, just another issue that they need to work on. But fertility is a way that it comes out. Others, it's come out with this pandemic. So it has brought that thing to the surface that was already in there. You can't spill from an empty cup. There has to be that stuff in there. And this could have been a process in your mind, like, you know, I'm always wanting to get pregnant. I'm not sure if I will. There's time, there's marriage. All this stuff has to fall into play. And then the control brain has to take over and think that I want this so badly, I have to make it happen. And then that making it happen is almost a tight grip on the hose that stops the flow of the body. Does that make sense? I made my own healing journey epically long because of that. My mind has to take over and help. Otherwise, I'm going to get an asthma attack and die. It's similar. Does that make sense? If anyone, does that make sense? This is applying to anyone's health journey. If that makes sense, just give me a thumbs up. That is a big part. So I'm balancing, trying to help whittle down that control and ease that up, because once that happens, there's so much more space for the body to heal. It's miraculous. So I see some thumbs up, practitioners giving thumbs up. My cousin says, yes for me and so many of my friends facing any health challenge. It's natural. We all have it, but we have different outward challenges that we latch that thing onto. Mine was asthma, and then anyone on the fertility journey, they will have it. It's very rare that a woman comes in very calm and just like, if I don't have the baby, I won't. Then that's just the way it's supposed to be. There is this, like, it has to have happened yesterday, and almost an anger at the practitioner and disappointment every month because of their expectation of they should have pregnancy. But we have to be realistic in this world. When there's and I mean this with all due respect, when there's no attention to the hormones, when you have to put so much attention on the hormones because of all of this interference now, it's sometimes not just we're entitled to get pregnant when we want to. It's not that world anymore. If you lived on a farm, can you see right up to the last over? If you lived on a farm, away from Wi-Fi, all that stuff, and maybe yes, that should be like, I wanted to get pregnant and I got pregnant. But this modern day world, it's a different story. We have to accept that. So Sohani says, can you conceive right up to the last ovary? Yes, in Chinese medicine, they say that if you are ovulating and having a period, you are still fertile. So many patients came to me and their moms, they told me their mom got pregnant with them at perimenopause. Of the last several months, I've had women who are like in their 60s tell me that their ex-husband's mom was like 48 when they got pregnant. So that's like a different generation, and there was no fertility stuff usually around that time. And I think one of them was 48 and then even had a child after that. So that's like, 2 generations ago when fertility stuff wasn't even on the docket. But yes, to answer your question, so honey, if they say you can conceive right up into the last ovary, yes, if one's removed, you are still ovulating. I'm not sure if that's your history, but I'm just saying, if one's removed, you can still get pregnant with that ovulation, and up until the last menses, you can get pregnant. So there's several women I'm helping, who are in their 46 or whatever, and they're just starting to have that anxiety now because they have a child already. But before with the first child, there wasn't that anxiety, and it was just really like, let's balance the hormones, let's do this. And there were later pregnancies as well. Sometimes, there are things in the way, like cysts and physical barriers like fibroids, in which case, yeah, we can do all the fertile grounds prep we need to, but sometimes there needs to be a medical intervention to perhaps clear the uterus, or there'll have to be IVF to implant the egg to get around that. That's just, that's what this is there for. This medical help is there for in those situations. But to think like I tried to get pregnant for a few months and it's not happening and not change anything in my world and go straight to IVF is where I have a bit of a concern, especially when it's not in the time frame of like getting anxious. Like, to me, you have up until like 41ish, depending on your health history. 41, like I said, there's some patients 46, and everyone has a different kind of conception, chronological age, but you have time. So that time pressure is part of that clamp that we have, and if we can pry that clamp off, it's a whole new ballgame. Trust me, it's a whole new ballgame. I had one patient who stuck with me, and there was a high level of anxiety, and it was from, you know, a traumatic nervous system from childhood. It wasn't actually physical abuse, but the whole household was very like heightened traumatic nervous system. So that was her nervous system. And because of that heightened traumatic nervous system, we had to correct that. And she just trusted it. And there were some points where, you know, it's like a year into it, and I'm like, maybe we should do. And she thought about it, it didn't make sense, and boom, pregnant. So not right after that, but like she did get pregnant with me, and she just trusted her body. And I'm very clear, like, if I can't help you, I will let you know. But there's never any harm to do this, even alongside seeking other alternatives too. But my preference is make that fertile soil. Make that fertile soil. I think it's this might be controversial to say, but it's also, you know, in this modern world, we have to make that soil fertile, and it's egotistical to just be like, I want the baby, I'm gonna like make sure it happens, without doing that work. When you know from 9 years old there was like major hormone imbalances that we need to correct. And those imbalances don't take years to correct. It's several good concentrated months, and it's a different fertility game altogether. The second point, whenever they say unexplained fertility, is for sure, hold on, let me just write this, hormones, estrogen, progesterone, for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, is the adrenals. So the adrenals I talk about all the time, they're the little glands that sit on top of the kidneys, and when there's a high elevated stress state, whether it's mental, emotional, whether it's physical pain, whether it's years of trauma in the household and just like a heightened nervous system, whether it's that, just go, like totally rushed, all that, just the programmed heightened nervous system, adrenal system, is the cortisol is like always running on adrenaline. There will be adrenal imbalance that draws on the progesterone that is being made in the body, because progesterone is also a precursor to cortisol, which is our stress it's our hormone produced by the adrenals, and we need, when we're in survival mode, we need to shunt the progesterone to help fortify the cortisol, because the body needs the adrenals to survive. It doesn't need to procreate to survive. So it's always in what's in the essence of the body to survive is to shunt now those hormones. We're recruiting other hormones to make more cortisol because the adrenals are so taxed. And so often that's the case, and adrenals are never tested by the medical doctors. They may test AM cortisol, but again, that's not accurate. It should be a saliva test, in my opinion. That's not tested by the medical doctors, nor is it tested by the fertility clinics yet. Maybe it will be, because they didn't even check thyroid stuff up until like the last few years, which I'll get to too, but now they are, so maybe they will be, but naturopathically I think we're way ahead of the game for why there are fertility issues. Not for the drugs and like the little intricacies and all that. Those clinics are like incredible. What they do is incredible, without a shadow of a doubt. But I'm talking about, do you want to forcefully put a seed in cement, or do you want it fertile grounds? You can make fertile grounds before going to the clinic too. You know, the purpose with our clinic may not be to always end state, just end up with the pregnancy. That would be ideal, but if it's not, at least you've never wasted time. You are making that cellular terrain healthy to receive the fertilized egg. So that is always my point. So when the body's in fight or flight stress mode, it's shunting the progesterone to create more cortisol, and now the person's in an estrogen dominant situation, and you need progesterone to hold the fertilized egg. And when it's not there, I know a person's adrenals are totally off, and that's never tested, and then so the person's in kind of a survival mode, and then there's a forced fertility situation. Why is the progesterone low for somebody? It's usually because it's being shunted to the adrenals. Does that make sense? So if everyone can throw up a thumbs up, if that makes sense, it's always the adrenals. Whenever they say unexplained fertility, when you look at the body, there's always triangles of how it operates. And so to me, the triangle of the adrenals is linked to the ovaries. So there's some thumbs up and hearts. Good. So this is making sense. So there's the adrenals when you think of it, the ovaries, and at the top is the thyroid. So the body, when the adrenals are off, you know that the hormones are off here too, and if they're not, eventually they will be, and the thyroid will also eventually be off too. So if somebody has long-term adrenal issues, I'm going to look towards their thyroid because eventually it'll be off. And if they already have a thyroid issue, I'm pretty certain that there is, without a shadow of a doubt, adrenal issues, because that's usually the gas pedal, is the adrenals. If they're revved up or depleted, it is affecting the thyroid, which they say is the gland of fertility. So you need to have an optimal hormonal system of adrenals and thyroid. And that is now being tested. So a lot of the fertility clinics will now test the TSH. I don't know if they do the full panel, but that's what you need to test, is the full panel and the adrenals. And then you'll find that it's not unexplained fertility. There is an explanation for sure. And even if your tests are picture perfect and I do somebody's health history, there's still imbalances to treat in their history. So there's always something to treat. And like I said, the minute percentage of unexplained fertility is there. There is some unexplained fertility. And in that case, you know, we really have to think like what is going on here, and maybe there's a bigger picture, something more spiritually at play here. So, you know, we have to look into that too. Even with a fertility challenge, this is a spiritual journey. You know, bringing life into this world is a spiritual journey. We have to see how we approach it, and is there a humble approach to the body, or are we controlling, are we forcing, are we being entitled? You know, that is part of it too. And I don't mean to sound harsh. This is just questions we got to ask ourselves. And for me, it wasn't the fertility journey. It was my own overall health journey. That was all these questions I had to ask. And there was a lot of forcing on my part, which, you know, over nature, can you imagine trying to wrestle with a waterfall? Somebody's going to win. And it's going to be the waterfall, just as an FYI. That's like your body. There's internal innate processes, and something's going to win, and it's not usually going to be our mind. So the third point quickly, so the adrenals have to be addressed. We have to do a lot of work on the adrenals. That one patient who stuck with me for over a year to get pregnant, she had major adrenal issues, and that's all we worked on, is her nervous system and her adrenals, and then she got pregnant. Why do some women conceive through IVF but miscarry within 3 months? I don't know their case. Like I said, I do a thorough health history case from like when their moms were pregnant with them. Like I do a thorough health history case. And I'm assuming that there is a progesterone issue. I don't know, because you need progesterone to hold the baby. And I know that they're giving progesterone with IVF in the first 3 months. But like I said, is the baby being implanted in a cement cellular terrain, or is it fertile, lush soil? We can force anything, but is it going to hold? Is because the grounds are fertile. So we have to really think about that too. So I don't know, it's per person, specific to the person, why they would miscarry in 3 months. But sometimes when there's no other deeper work being done, and it's just they said it was unexplained fertility, and then you try for IVF, there is usually something out of balance. It is a symptom, you know. We're technically supposed to get pregnant. If we can't, there's something going on. We have to, you know, look into that. There's a reason, there's something going on. And once that can be balanced and corrected, then there should be fertility. I always usually tell my patients, especially the younger ones, especially the ones who just got married, if I'm treating them for their gut issues, autoimmune, I'm like, watch out. If you don't want to get pregnant, just be more careful, because as we treat, you will become more fertile. And they usually are very thankful for the warning. Because that's just, you can't compartmentalize healing. When I'm helping someone heal, we're healing their whole body, and the fertility follows suit, you know? Even though we haven't addressed it, I'm helping them balance their whole body. So I just say, just be careful. If this is not what you want at this time, So when I treat like their gut issues, their autoimmune, their, whatever it is, eczema, there will be a higher degree, I feel, of fertile ground. So the third point I wanted to make is diet. So the gut is one of our biggest neuroendocrine organs that we have. It is responsible for 90% of our serotonin production, our dopamine production. There's so many more neurotransmitters. It is essentially our initial brain. The brain and the gut tissue are identical tissues. In the fetus evolving, one goes into the skull, one goes into the gut. And what really depletes our adrenals, which I just talked about on point 2, is something that's causing inflammation to the gut. So the medical doctors are now piecing together a lot of this stuff, but I don't think they know why. So they just say eat an anti-inflammatory diet. I just saw one booklet that was sent to me that someone wanted to do work with another clinic, but then they trusted me. So they're like, can we do something like this? And it's all taking out inflammatory foods. Yes, we can do that, but do you know why we're doing that? We're doing that because when foods are inflammatory to the system, the body has to pump out more cortisol and further stress out the adrenals. So the cortisol is like the fire being put out, the hormone to help put out the inflammation fire in the body. And so when we take those inflammatory foods out, your adrenals can rest and recoup, and there's a higher predisposition to get pregnant because you're now no longer in survival mode with your adrenals, not recruiting the progesterone, and the gut is calmer, and it's allowing for this healing to happen. So one of the biggest disruptors of the adrenals is gluten. And so to so my friend Hardeep just signed in. Hi, Hardeep. So the biggest, I was thinking about you this weekend. I meant to text you, but got lost in my own little brain. I will text you after this live. So I was thinking about you all weekend. So when we have high inflammatory foods, we're depleting from the adrenals. And so to take out those inflammatory foods, gluten is one of them. If you're sensitive, gluten is for sure, without a shadow of a doubt. Love that saying today, apparently, without a shadow of a doubt. I said that like 10 times. You do a drinking game with this replay, and every time I say that phrase, you can have a drink of kombucha. But without a shadow of a doubt, gluten causes inflammation. And if you're sensitive to it, and it's depleting the adrenals. So taking out gluten gives your gut time to heal. And a lot of women will say, when I eat it or don't eat it, I don't feel a difference. But if a woman is sensitive to it, it's not necessarily going to be gas, bloating, pain. It's just overall inflammation, and it's helping the adrenals. When I do an adrenal saliva test, in the panel, it's 4 samples are taken for the adrenals, and the only food that they test is a reaction to gluten. So that's how much the gluten impacts the adrenals. For another person, it could be another food, but gluten is a big one for the adrenals. And if you ever have seen a celiac patient, that is an actual allergy to gluten, like an antibody-mediated response to gluten. When I help someone, they can't just take out gluten from their system, and when they find out they're celiac, there's years of adrenal repair that needs to be done because of such high inflammation in their system. And it's a destroyer for their gluten. The gluten that was being eaten for all those years without knowing is a destroyer for the adrenals. So there's so many years of adrenal work I have to help a person go through if they're celiac. So can you imagine if somebody's sensitive to gluten and trying to get pregnant? That is a big, big, big issue for fertility because of the inflammatory effect and then the cortisol output from the adrenals to dampen it. So does that make sense? So big things, you gotta balance the periods. There's so much more to it. There's so much more. I'm looking at like childhood stuff, antibiotics, how your nervous system, addresses stressors, emotions, all that stuff. I haven't even discussed heart, but in reflexology, your heart is the uterus. So if there's mental emotional blockers in your life and you're trying to override that by having a kid and thinking, the kid will fix everything, your body again knows better and the heart will not allow it. So sometimes you're being asked to unearth things that your body wants to deal with, but you just haven't had perhaps the time or courage. So Rita says, amazing, neat. It makes so much sense to me before, during, and after pregnancy. Yeah. So the heart, so going from, so adrenals and gluten, I think that's clear. So I don't want people to just play around with gluten and try to get pregnant. It's deeper than that. That's just trying to pick and choose and try to treat yourself. It doesn't work like that. You need a systematic approach. When it comes to the heart and the deeper emotions, those have to be addressed. If that's the blocker for fertility. This is bonus point number 4. But the heart and the uterus, sometimes, even when the woman is pregnant, after giving birth, all these emotions, because she is open energetically, physically, and mentally, spiritually, all those emotions that were never dealt with now have to be dealt with. So do you want to deal with it when you have a newborn? Or do you want to deal with it prior to and have that soil be so fertile that, you know, they come through not having to have a mom that has to deal with all the stuff that's being unearthed by that opening of bringing this child into the world. So the heart and the uterus is the same. When I treat for fertility, I often am using heart remedies to get the woman's hormones balanced. So it's very interesting. It is so deep. This fertility journey is so deep. It is so much more than estrogen and progesterone. The heart, you cannot bypass. Remove gluten for adrenal fatigue. Sometimes that is the, so Tinder's asking if you can remove gluten for adrenal fatigue. If a person's sensitive to it, yeah. Not everyone will be just sensitive to gluten. Some people will be dairy, some people will be something else, chickpeas, whatever it is. But if a person is sensitive to gluten, it will deplete their adrenals for sure. So then taking it out will help the adrenals heal. Yeah, does that make sense about the heart and the uterus? I've had many women explain to me how all these emotions came, and even emotions they didn't even know were there. This is a good question. Hardeep is asking, is this a part of postpartum depression? I believe an element of postpartum depression is everything coming to the surface that was not dealt with, yes. So Rita says it makes sense. Yes, all that stuff is under the water. It's like if you think about an iceberg, there's like the points above the water, but there's a mass underneath the water that if we don't deal with it and try to just railroad through and have a baby, it's gonna come out. If it doesn't come out after birth, it will guarantee come out at menopause. That's another opening. This entire live broadcast is my journey. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Rita. That's like really vulnerable share. I really appreciate you sharing that. And it is classic. And even the mental overriding of it, sometimes the overriding is because I don't want to deal with this stuff. I want the baby. I don't want to deal with the fact that perhaps like I have stuff that I haven't dealt with since I was 7. I don't want to deal with that maybe I have marriage problems and the baby will fix it. The baby is not supposed to come into this world and fix your problems. That's too much for them. They are supposed to come into this world with their own journey, and the heart hopefully is cleaned for them to come into have their journey, not be the wound fixer for our journey, if that makes sense. And I know that can seem harsh, but it is true. Because then rides an entanglement, and now the child will probably have symptoms of something as they're growing up because it's not their own journey. They're, you know, expressing somebody else's pain. And a caretaker. And without that caretaker, they will not survive. So it's deep. What runs for these children when they have symptoms that come into our office is deep. This work is deep. It's not something that you can just like read about and add some vitamins from Costco. As you know, I'm more about absorption over supplementation, and you can absorb, fertile grounds can absorb when all this stuff is dealt with. Whatever you do put in, you can absorb. But yeah, the heart, it is big. That is a big one. Yeah, maybe I'll leave it at that. Is there any questions? I can even answer about the mental emotional aspect of it too. But if there's any questions, let me know. I went over again, which I was expecting, but I'll just pop off if no one has questions. But yeah, it's a good question. But is this postpartum? I believe so. Yes, of course the hormones are fluctuating and surging, but that brings up the deeper emotions. And I just have a patient recently. She's going through peri. She went through a lot of stuff in her life, and it was always happy and very level-headed, and now she's going through perimenopause, which is again a heart opener. That little window is being cracked open. If we don't deal with it in menopause, it will be blown open. And she is dealing with all the stuff that she did not know, and I'm talking from like 13, and it's coming up. And that's what happens when the hormones create that opening, but we don't act on it. And then at menopause, your body's going to be like, you have to act on it. This is the next level being asked of you. So it's the spiritual work. This is the spiritual work. So Flavie says, thank you. This is a really good talk. It was my pleasure. So Honey says, thank you. Yeah, everyone, thank you. If you know anyone on a fertility journey, please feel free to share this with them. It'll be up indefinitely on our Facebook group, but yeah, feel free to share the link. And there's so much more to fertility, and I've had many cases of babies come through. And Herdy says thank you. You're so welcome. Rita says thank you. And then there's been many cases where we just prepped the soil, and then there was the fertility clinic, and it's all perfect. But no work and forced is where I have the kind of like, you know, we should do something. Yes, I will, for sure. Herdy says call me. Okay, thank you everyone. I hope you enjoy this rest of the sunny day. Try to get outside. Speaking of hormones, the light hitting your eyes is so balancing for your hormones. So try to get outside. Touch your feet on the ground. Touch your backyard if you have grass. Touch your feet on the ground. If you have a baby that's crying, hold the baby and touch your feet on the ground. That'll help them ground. Yeah, so just reconnect. Thank you everyone for tuning in. That was super fun. Stay tuned for our August schedule. We're still just solidifying it, but the schedule should be for detox. So look out for that. I think I'm going to do a talk on bitters, liver bitters, which are like my favorite thing to do right now. So that's going to be one of them. There's going to be a few other talks that I do. So just stay tuned for that. And yeah, like I said, feel free to share this Facebook Live. It seems to have resonated with some who've actually been through this. So thanks everyone. I always appreciate you tuning in, and I will chat soon. Bye.